you actually shape shift yourself into different forms, and then it's like another form of its own, and it doesn't have to lie in either of that, but make its own space.
Just know that where you are now is not where you're going to be later. Because if you keep doing it, you'll, you'll, I think, just naturally get better. I wanted to be an artist. I didn't know how to get there. So that was it. I didn't have a plan B. I'm pretty happy where I am as an artist. I don't need to be in one of those big fancy galleries in New York. I think it's just watching people look at my art is one of the most satisfying things. Either they think I'm crazy or they love it one way or the other, and that's what we are out there to do, to bring out emotions in other people.
June, how are you?
I am well today, and you?
Very well. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you just told me it's pretty early for you. And I always appreciate this, when people take out the time. And, I know it's not always easy, but I'm very grateful for you, taking this time and sharing and, talking with us today.
Well, the world is not flat and we're not all in the same time zone, so I understand the difficulties.
What's exciting about your work is definitely the work itself, but I love your storytelling. I love how your your piece of art is one piece of art for sure, but also the way you share the narratives you build, the way you tell your story is so exciting and um so captivating. And I'm very interested in, you know let's start with can you talk a little bit about how did you start getting into social media as per and building these, like, these videos, and how dramatic and like they look like piece of art in themselves. How did you get to them?
Well, I started on Instagram. A friend set me up that when it first started, when they really were Instagram, and I had no idea what I was doing. And they didn't have reels. I was just posting imagery, and now it's evolved into this.
Video platform.
Right. And I kind of, my husband accuses me that I've always wanted to be a director, which, no, maybe cinematographer. I don't know. Um, I try and tell a story, and I found that just the little clips that I put along, I don't know. It's like some clips I have, I'm walking into my studio, opening a door, getting the palette ready. But you can't do that all the time. You have to change it up. And it's getting harder to select music because I don't know. It has to be. I discovered that people like my voice for whatever reason. It sounds soothing, is what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's like
And
a very holding as well.
yeah, well, then I didn't like captions over the art. I
Okay.
wanted I wanted the art to be the focus and the shine. Even if they're not listening, they might get the story.
Yeah.
I've only had a few problems with the voice. Sometimes people think it's too sexy, and
Yeah, isn't that like a compliment in itself?
it is, but it's really weird because it came from a guy who I'm sure is young enough to be my grandson. And he made this comment about, um, I'm it's hot in this room. I have to take my shirt off. Where's my glass of wine? Only jokingly respond with, "Oh, put your pants back on. I'm talking about paint, about how much I love paint." Yes, paint can be sexy, but it's not that sexy. Let me tell you that.
Oh my God. That's a conversation you'll always remember.
Yes. Well, anyhow, so I try and tone it down just a little bit and keep to straight up talking about art. It's all business. but I like I'm having fun with it, and I try and do one serious piece and one lighthearted piece so I can balance my voice, yes, and not go nuts on all the dark pieces I could come up with. Because some of them are like a little bit on the feminist side, but I have to say I'm a humanist before I am a feminist. I mean, I don't. On some ways, on some levels, I believe that humans are the worst thing that happened to the earth. But since we're here, I would like all humans to live peacefully and gracefully.
To be better
Um,
humans.
yeah.
Yeah.
But some of my work is definitely related to things that happened to myself in my life, and they're not all cheery. So
How about,
I,
do you feel comfortable talking about that?
I can talk about that. Um, anyone who abused me is now dead, so I can. I laugh because it's a nervous laugh, but
Yeah, I get you. If only if you're comfortable.
I was raped when I was younger. I was married to an abusive man, and so I have some insights. I've done a lot of thinking about how I got myself into those situations and that I'm not to blame and how I was manipulated and used. Um, so I have a lot of empathy for other women, what's going on with them around the world. It's um, uh, when I think about Afghanistan or Ukraine,
Yeah,
it's the women and children that
suffer a
are
lot.
seemingly expendable.
Yeah,
I don't want to call us the weaker sex because I actually think we're smarter,
and stronger.
but
And
and
strength is, I think,
stronger.
always never is not always physical. I think strength is so much more than that. And I think the endurance women have,
Mhm.
let a man push a child and have a child, and
I have not had that experience, but I understand and know people who have,
yeah,
and I just the hardest job in the world has got to be a parent, and
yeah.
one of the other hardest jobs has got to be being an artist because it's mentally struggling. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, am I doing this right?
yeah.
For one thing, am I good enough? Am I expressing this right? And you have to stop those voices.
Tell me something. When you say your work, let's try to go back. When did you first started painting? Make using when did you first start using creativity, arts as a medium of, let's say, healing, expression, communication? Because I think, when you're going through hard times, I think art takes a huge role, you know, playing all these functions and roles.
I'm sure I used it as a child. My mother was probably bipolar and a bit of a narcissist, and so she was a little bit hard to live with. And I would isolate myself in my room and draw. That that would be my, was my escape. I mean, being sent to my room to clean it, or having done something that made her unhappy, fine, I'll go to my room. That's my sanctuary. Yeah. So early on, that was it. I um, did go to art school for a short time, but I had to quit for well, it was a good thing because they weren't teaching realism back then in the late 1970s. Um, I had a tough time in my 20s finding my way.
What did you plan on doing then? What were you doing? What did you while you were young? Even being an artist was like.
I wanted to be an artist. I didn't know how to get there. So that was it. I didn't have a plan B. And I had a rough time. I did a lot of menial
Jobs and stuff.
jobs and still drew. And, I'd do a logo or something like that.
But even at that point, even today, a lot of people, when they decide or say out loud, I want to be an artist, you get eyes rolling and you're like, oh, are you going to be starving? Or like, how would you make money? Or this is a hobby, or it will take for too long. Even in today's age and time, it isn't the easiest job. But in the 1970s, I guess, I mean, it would have been like, it would be way tougher than this. And also, I think way rarer. I mean, you wouldn't have as many examples around you, if I'm not wrong.
No, there was probably one representational gallery in the Bay Area, and I didn't know it because there was no internet.
Yes, no internet. Everything is you have to go and.
And I went to college young. I was uh, 17 when I started and left when I was 18 plus. Um, so I was not prepared for the real world. My mother said, "Oh, you should always take typing." And as a backup, I refused to take typing.
I remember my mom used to keep telling me, and a lot of people from how typing was there, like the doctors and engineers of today, typing was their go-to, like secure and like a in-demand job.
and either that or get married. And I didn't want to do either one of those things at that time. And the 80s were a struggle. I grew up in the Northern California. I know it says I was born in Hawaii, but I spent 27 days there or something like that. So I am, consider myself from California, but I was born in Hawaii.
Where are you right?
Right now, I'm in Savannah, Georgia, a place I would never have imagined living in the South, but life takes you places. And I spent 17 years in Seattle, which is, I was going to get to that timeline. That's where I actually met other artists who were making a living.
What brought you to Seattle?
It was a man. I'm just going to say he was a nice man. He was not, he was an idiot to me, and we didn't work out. It was,
What got you to Seattle? A community that you wanted.
he got me to Seattle. I remember him looking at a landscape I was painting on watercolor paper in acrylic, and I had it stapled to the wall. And I had just refused a job to. We bought a house together. I refused to take a job as a assistant for a receptionist for a law firm, and he was mad at me for turning it down. So I'm painting this landscape. He walks in and he said, "Are you sure you can sell that?" Now I'm really mad. And I did eventually. And after we broke up, I sort of remained friends. And somehow, success is the best revenge, actually.
Yeah,
I would
that's
make
true.
sure that he was invited to all my shows.
So, how did you find your way till here? Let's talk about that.
I'm going to say, because I landed in the South, I married somewhat of an arranged marriage. I met my third husband in Atlanta at a wedding. And my best friend was moving from Seattle to Atlanta, and she insisted she was going to get me to move to the South. And I was, got rid of the last husband. I'm not moving to the South. Are you kidding me? I've heard stories about the South. It's a beautiful place, by the way, nothing like the reputation it has. The politics here are very different than Northern California or Seattle. But Um, it's beautiful. But my husband had a very stable job. He worked in the tech industry for many years. And when I got to Atlanta, which is where I first moved, he told me, "What is it you want to do?" My dark, moody landscapes from Seattle were not going to sell in bright, sunny, flowery, lush green Atlanta. And I think the realism that was in Atlanta at the time was pretty much decorative. And I just said I wanted to be a figurative painter, and so I experimented a lot with that. We bought some property in Savannah, and that changed everything. Um, I met new friends. I started taking pictures of them, and I came up with the theory. I want to be, since representational art, even 17 years ago, was not really accepted. I thought, what if I came up with a cross between Gerhard Richter and Francis Bacon? So I took a lot of nocturnal photos in bars and houses and musicians playing, and so the photos were blurry. And that was my first big success. A gallery asked me to join them in Boston, and that was the start of it. And I got tired of being unrealistic. And so the June today is much more realistic and much more. Um, I've added the three-dimensional element of, which has included a lot
How did that come into play?
of a crazy idea. I was sitting in my living room looking at a painting of one of my older relatives that no one wanted these paintings in my family. They're from 1780 or something like that, Andrew Jackson's era, and the frames are very ornate. And I love the way the gold interacted with the paint. And I just thought, why can't that be actually integrated with the painting? So that's how that started. And it brought me to a place where I could be hyper realistic with my paintings and still include this element of play. Because most of these, all of these three-dimensional images or things that I'm adding are plaster casts, and they're now a special plaster because I've learned that you have to use a really strong plaster to make delicate looking things.
How do you like do you what are these objects like? Do you like really make them, or you find them and then you work on them? How does that work actually? So anyone
This
who's watching
is
this on YouTube can see.
Yes,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
that is a magnolia petal. I
Oh,
make them
library.
from real things. This is a cast of a ginger flower.
Okay. So you basically scavenge the things that you want to make and then transfer them.
I've done my dog's paws. Um,
Oh,
and also, a big part of my elements are part of the frames that initially um, inspired me.
yeah. Oh,
So
wow.
I find these things, but like in the painting that's here,
Yeah. I can see it.
she not only does she have these petals and leaves and bougainvillea flowers, but she also has a bird in there. And I found a small sculpture of a bird, but I wanted it to be a different kind of bird, so I had to change his beak. His beak was not The right beak.
Okay.
His beak was that of a, I guess he's a bluebird or something like that. And I wanted to do a painted bunting.
Okay.
Um, this piece was designed for a show at Haven Gallery. Beautiful Bazaar magazine invited me
Yes, you
to.
were. Yeah. I saw that. A
Um,
big congratulations on that.
yeah, thank you. There's a show called Serendipity, which sounds really easy, like, oh, it's lively, you can do almost anything, but it's really hard to put in a visual um, painting. It was much more difficult, and I thought Savannah was my serendipity. Um, Both the city and this model is her name is Savannah. And one of the first paintings I ever did of her, she had it was a pastel with a background of silver leaf or metal leaf, and she had a painted bunting in her hair. So I am reinventing that same painting in a different way in my new style and calling it serendipity.
Tell me something. Um, I'm really interested in knowing, like, you've had a long career. From the 1970s to, we're in 2023. A lot has changed. A lot has changed in the sense of, world in itself, of course, with the intake of, internet, digital media. Um, what's very exciting to me is that you, for one, um, seem to be very like your own social media is very exciting, very refreshing, and looks like you have a very strong grip over it. How is this learning curve of being an artist? Like, I think with the evolving times, you've also evolved on how to be an artist from, from being traditional door to door to being an artist on social media, internet. Then I think also in today's time, the biggest role, like, you're no longer just an artist who's a painter, but you're also a content creator. Then you become a filmmaker, and these so many skill sets that get added to our profiles today. How has that been for you?
It's been scary, to tell you the truth.
What are you doing
You
if you're
have,
good at it?
you don't learn unless you fail.
Yeah,
That's, uh,
that's true.
do not, I would suggest to other artists, just go out there. Don't be afraid. You know, when I first moved to Atlanta, my husband says, I can't afford to keep buying you film. You're going to have to go digital. And I'm like, I don't know how to work a computer that well. And he said, oh, yes. And there's this program out there called Photoshop. I'll
Yes.
get you that. He had no idea how to use it,
Oh,
but he just left me home alone with, he says,
Photoshop.
just save everything. You'll be fine. And that probably took 6 months out of my life learning just layers. And eventually, I got good enough that I could design. I owned two galleries during my lifetime
Yeah.
too, so
Oh,
I have
wow.
gallery experience. My first husband in Seattle owned a print atelier and gallery, so I kind of married into that one.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to Savannah, I had a gallery for a short time just because I really loved the building. It was an old historic building. And that takes, for anyone who thinks that gallerists don't earn their commission, that's not,
Definitely not easy.
it is not easy. And I know you've been experimenting with that yourself.
Yeah.
I've, I've heard you talk about that. And there's all these expenses that come
Yeah.
along with brick and mortar. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that people don't think about ensuring the art that's in the space,
Yeah.
um, things like that.
And I think, I think in today's time, and why we started and I started with experimenting with this idea has always been like, for me, I think I find it very interesting approaching work from anything that I do from both the ends, someone who's seeking a job and someone who can employ a job both. And the perspective it brings is a very, it makes you a better employer, it also makes you a better artist, or like an employee, or like on the other ends, like, so I wanted to, I didn't start on a like I didn't start Arts with the intent of, okay, I wanted to really build something out of this. But when I started to get into it, I started to realize, okay, when I was looking at this from the forefront of being an artist, it looked completely different. And when I'm looking at this from someone who's on the other side of, this profession, it looks very different. So always helped me look at things on a much larger perspective, than just looking at it with one lens. I'm sure this must have added a lot to you as well, because playing different over the years, you've done a lot of different jobs and within the art world, arts, design, and then also continue to remain, to be an artist. That must have really given you a lot more perspectives.
It did, and I learned that for myself, I can't do both at the same time. It inhibited, I think, me trying new things. I kept doing the same thing that would sell from the gallerist's perspective, and it was not as satisfying. So that was, but it also, if anyone can do just an even internship with a local gallery or something, that will give you a good perspective on what you need to do if you want to be in a gallery. There's so many choices. I mean, Ashley Longshore has gone like totally created her own way, which is great.
Yeah, it's like opening a new path, thinking of new ways, and really, because I think not one way works for all, and we can all have the liberty, and we can all choose our paths. I mean, definitely. What did you feel was the most, that as an artist made viable to you as a career that pays you over the years?
I, I don't think about, I think it's just people watching people look at my art is one of the most satisfying things. Either they think I'm crazy or they love it one way or the other, and that's what we are out there to do, to bring out emotions in other people. I don't think about it while I'm doing it. I'm totally free forming, like I'm going to add sticks to the top of this woman's head, and maybe it'll make sense to somebody in a symbolic way. Um, I think John Dalton put it like, looking at your work is like seeing the Japanese language or something like that. It looks very beautiful and you like looking at it, but you can't understand it at all.
And you keep guessing it, keep guessing it, keep guessing.
It could be, and I like doing things that are up for interpretation and you don't have to bash people over the head with your, everything has to be beautiful for me. That's, I like nature.
How did you start making these works and these stories that you're telling via? First, tell me, how was the learning curve adapting to this whole platform and then editing videos and making these and then also professionally shooting them? Don't you get exhausted?
I do. um, I have taken to, I started out just filming everything that I did, and then I found that editing all that was way too much work. And I started looking at which reels appealed to most people, and I've kind of limited it down to, it's that last stroke that makes it look like the eye is reflecting light, or the very thin strokes of wispy hair. And so when I'm working, I think, okay, is this one of those moments
You should
that
capture.
someone goes, aha?
Yeah,
And I can do that for, in installing pedals. Like it's not easy
yeah.
doing this. Sometimes installing things where people go, ah, that's how you put it together. And I like hearing that other people are inspired by this. Um, I hope they take care and make sure that it's on a wood panel and not on canvas because that would be not secure enough. There are little things. Um, I've recently discovered that if I share things on Facebook as well as Instagram, the questions I get on Facebook definitely tell me that they're not reading the hashtags because I'll say oil painting and they are asking me, is this acrylic or oil? That'd be the most common question. I'm like, just read, you know. But Instagram people don't ask me those kind of questions generally.
Yeah. Um, Tell me something. You've had these years of experience working as an artist. What is the biggest difference between the June who started out versus the June who, who's sitting right, across me right now as an artist?
As an artist, I think I am more secure and I don't, um, I trust myself more. That's the, when I started out, I was more sponge like. I was trying to absorb everything, all I wanted. And I was following, when Instagram started, I was probably started following more trends. Um, and now I think I've evolved into more me. Yeah, I follow my own heart. I can be as realistic as I want or not. If I want a blob of paint somewhere because I think it needs it, like for example, the painting I'm working on now, I am thinking about the older pieces I did that were slightly blurry, and I'm thinking there needs to be some motion in her hand. It just has to be some motion. So I will add that, even, just because I have that in my back pocket.
And how about the biggest, what do you think has been the biggest struggle for you all these years as an artist? One of the biggest struggles.
Just getting started was the hardest part. Um, it's probably the hardest part for everyone to find your own niche. It's a little easier for representational artists now because on that little screen that we're looking at all the time, people can recognize the subject. Um, I think abstract artists have are doing well as well. Everything is accepted, but I think representational artists are getting more views because you can see it easier. I'm still trying to develop ways to show the three-dimensional aspects of my work, and that's what the video is really the kind of necessary item. Because if I just take a flat picture, people think that the petals are painted, and they'll be painted in some parts, but like um, I actually paint in shadows so that the drop shadows below things that I've installed so that it's always in the right light no matter who likes it.
Where does these women come from in your work?
Savannah just came to me because I don't really know how I met Savannah. I just friends of a friend and that knew her as a model. Another model just as gorgeous. She was a Megan. She was one of my first models. She designed jewelry in Savannah. If I didn't own the gallery, I wouldn't have met all these people, I don't think. But I have two main models that I've been working with since they were 14, and they're twin. They're twins. So everybody thinks all the blondes are the same, and they can be forgiven with the twins because they look the same. Um, they are the daughters of a collector, and so that was by sheer chance that I wanted to have two models in a painting that were relatively the same size. So I called up this collector and said, "Hey, you've got twins. Wouldn't that work?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, we're on that." And so now they're 21 and still gorgeous.
I'm sure, I mean, they would feel so lucky to have these, like it's not only how they're growing, but also the honor and the privilege to have their, their aging being restored and like you're recorded in such a way. How lucky.
Well, and I think my painting has become better, so they have a record of how we've both grown, actually. But I've chased down models in grocery stores, though, and I've been the crazy old yes. Um, so, like, I would a woman was with her mother, I would say, at some section in a grocery store, and I'm like, "Oh, she has the most gorgeous hair, she has a beautiful jawline, she brunette hair, really super long." She's in one of my recent shows, and, I just gave her a card and said, "I'd be interested in painting you, and I can get away with this because I think I am female and not really, I don't look like a creepy man." And they looked at me like, "Oh, I don't know about this," and I said, "Well, just keep the card, that's fine." And then later on down the grocery store, she's running down the aisle. She's going, "I would love to do this."
Do you make people sit for you?
I do, but only photographs. So I'm a nervous painter. I don't paint from life, and I want just the right light, which I don't have the studio set up so that the light would be consistent all the time. And no one has time to do that for me. I will call people back because I will say, "You know what? The ballet slippers aren't cutting it for me. I need bare feet. So let's shoot your feet again." Um, I take hundreds of pictures, thousands actually, and I have a whole backup drive full of models. I hoard them, and sometimes I go back and bring them to life again.
Do you see yourself in any of their work?
I am due for a self-portrait, I think, and I have ideas about how I'm gonna do that. The older you get, the more uncomfortable that becomes for women, I think. I think the last self-portrait I did was me with silver leaf in the background, and I had clouds in front of all the parts that make me nervous, which is my neck and my chin and all those little things. I don't mind the laugh lines, so I've earned those. But I called it partly cloudy, and I meant that in kind of a serious way, but it was a self-portrait that sold right away. So I have to figure out what's next there. It's got to have some three-dimensional aspects to it. Um, there'll be lots of flowers involved.
I I'm looking forward to, and I'm even looking forward to how would you tell that story?
I I definitely have a crazy brain. I had a dream about it, so I know it's going to happen. It was a very strong dream. I woke up right away and remembered it. I get ideas in dreams. I get ideas in the shower. I get
Yeah, me
ideas
too. Shower is one of the
looking at a
best for me.
yes. I look at plants like
Oh
a
wow.
recent painting that's in New York called 11, which is one of the twins. I have this vine that grows up a trellis in my front yard, and I just think the vine is so exquisitely beautiful the way it's it's 17 years old, and it's jasmine grows like wild here, and
Oh
my
wow.
husband has groomed this plant severely. So it's got a very I think it's holding up the trellis actually.
Oh wow.
Um, so I made casts from that plant. I use silicone molds and I just paint the silicone on the plant. And then I had to reassemble them on the painting because they have to be flat to fit and look like they're going around the model.
Yeah.
So that was an influence from a plant
Oh my
and
God.
how it survived my husband's constant grooming.
Oh my. Okay. One last question. Um, what do you what excites you now? Like, you've been working, I this is something that particularly interests me. Like, while we're young, we have so many, like, when you're starting something just fresh, no matter what age you're starting it at, when you're young at something that you're doing, when you've just started it, you have so many things to, to create, and so many ideas to pursue. But once you've been doing it for far too long, how do you keep yourself as excited and inspired as you felt, the first day when you saw something or you want to experiment, that excitement?
I don't think I've lost that. And I think that's the key. I mean, I'm not afraid. I have way more ideas than I will possibly get out in my lifetime. It's 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 just who I am. I've always made things. I like how you put things together. I'm sure you look at a button, a person, a texture, and you think, oh, I have to put that in something. That's never gone away. I mean, my husband, like at dinner, I'll be looking out at a palm tree or something outside, and he'll say, "Are you listening to me?" And I'm like, "Well, you said something about the boat, but no." My brain
Oh
was
my
like,
God. Yes, I
"Oh,
get
yeah,
that.
I guess that."
People around me, my friends and, my family, the moment they see that spark in my eyes, and they're like, we're not taking this home. We can't carry this. We can't take this. Not another thing. Where will you keep it? I'm like, I don't know. I need to get this. I just have to. There's no, like, there's no, there's no space for it.
No, there is no, I've only been frustrated, not in ideas, but, people talk about writer's block or artist
Yeah,
block.
yeah,
I the time I had it was when I was working with metal leaf and gold leaf, and I was seeing a lot of it around.
yeah,
And I just felt like I was falling into this genre that I was going to be too much of a fad because I started seeing things that were not really done very well, and I thought I don't want to be lumped into that, and
yeah,
that kind of gave birth to me looking at this frame and thinking, well, what if I went somewhat sculptural with my paintings, and that takes it to a different level that can't be can't be copied or imitated very easily.
yeah.
I could still be myself, and to my shock and surprise, when I'm making these things, it takes me right back to when I was a kid and making mud pies, or just making things out of mud by by Lake Tahoe or wherever I was. So I don't, I don't, I could be a sculptor someday, but I still feel like the two should be blended for now. And
It's a beautiful take in itself. Like, you don't have to. I think also, like, shape shifting, that you actually shape shift yourself into different forms, and then it's like another form of its own, and it doesn't have to lie in either of that, but make its own space.
well, I don't know whether this is a words of wisdom. Just know that where you are now is not where you're going to be later. Because if you keep doing it, you'll you'll I think just naturally get better. And and you'll have other ideas. Your own taste will change. My own tastes have changed since I was a teenager. My goals haven't really changed, and I think I'm pretty happy where I am as an
That
artist. I
is so
don't need
nice.
to be, yeah, I mean, I don't need to be in one of those big fancy galleries in New York and be satisfied. Would I like to make more money? Yes, that's true. Country I live in, healthcare is just astronomically expensive, and I don't, it's a problem. Um, but I'm my artwork pays for itself and pays for other things that need repair around the house or maybe an extra vacation. So as long as I can keep working, then I am happy. Um, I did get refused a commission um, by a collection because they felt I was too old, and, and that my prices weren't high enough. That combination kind of shocked me. It's like, wait a minute, I thought this was an age, you couldn't be too old as an artist, but they didn't feel they could make enough money on it. It was crazy, very strange.
But I think um, when I don't think I think the skill, looking at your skill, and by skill, I'm not just saying the artwork. I think from what I've learned from your experiences, like I really admire how I think adaptive you are because I don't think people of our age or younger than me probably who we literally breathe digital. So we have been able to do as good work as you do with sharing your work. Not only, I mean, of course you have this huge experience of making the work that you're already making as an artist, but you've been such an excellent storyteller in the sense of digital, and you know it's remarkable, and it's only a testament that there's no bar to age. And I think good work has no it's not the number of work that you do. I think good work has a very different definition of how much of you and all that you've done those years behind you that you can put into to make something remarkable.
Thank you. I mean, I would also say you are the Energizer Bunny of podcasting. And you do so much and create your own work. I mean, we're both, I would say, digitally savvy. I'm still experimenting, and I think you are too. It's a journey.
And that is what I think really inspired me, because I think we all find a rhythm in things. I find my rhythm here in having these conversations, building things like Arts to Hearts. And for me, I really struggle with, I would never be a good cinematographer or a filmmaker, probably, in the sense of shooting myself, like with I'm so terrible, because for me, um I just couldn't find myself to be split. And while I was looking at your work, I'm like, how, like, it's so nice and skillful and amazing how, you and so many other creators out there who really take their work to the next level. And I really love that, because, I think as creatives, it's also like, how much can we challenge ourselves? How can you create more? Like, you've created this work, then how do you everything is art. The work that you're doing on on Instagram, the videos, it is art, it is stories, it is how you're telling them, and it only builds your skill, and it only shows you know how wonderfully creative you are from your. And I think it shows also another thing: when you're not being paid to do a job and you do it so far, like, crazy well, it only shows that your skill has, like, it's for you.
Oh, no, I just think you have to have that mindset of, being both ADHD and once you're into something, really focusing. That's to be able to switch back and forth is important, and you do it well.
It's crazy how it works, but I never knew about all of this quite some time ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is me. This is me." And ever since I found that out, I feel a lot more relief. I'm like, "Okay, this makes sense now."
It does. It does. It's crazy, but it does.
Yeah. Thank you so much, June. It was so, so nice. We've spoken for an hour and it doesn't feel like that, but thank you so much. I don't want to take a lot of time for you. I really appreciate you waking up so early for us.
It's light outside now. I can go to work now.
Or you could nap a little bit.
I
Wouldn't
could, I could nap.
But before I let you go, anyone who's interested in supporting your work, finding more about you, learning, where can they find you? If you have any other project that you want to share with us, please take this stage and share your heart out.
Well, let's see. I am showing at the Haven Gallery in, I think it's October, for a show called Serendipity, which is the piece I'm working on now. Just one piece going there. And then in the future, I think it's a duo show in New York at Stone Sparrow, December. It's a show that runs December, January, with another artist from, he's somewhere in the EU. I can't remember. I should have prepared and remembered his name, but I'm not
You
good
can
at
email us
that.
all these details, and we will, once we,
Right.
make the show notes, we'll add all of it to it.
And beyond that, my main gallery is Robert Lang Studios, and I still have a few works from my solo show, which was in April there. And they're lovely people, and they're close by. I can drive work to them. I don't have to ship them. So I'm sure I'll be doing some projects with them next year as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And whenever you do, make sure you share with us so that we can root for you and, celebrate you.
Yeah. Well, my Instagram is where everything is most Insta up to date. My website, for some reason, I can think of so many more things to do than update my website. So you can go there to see pieces that are lovely, but it's not been updated since my before my solo show. So Instagram is the place to go.
Instagram, yes. And I would highly recommend you following June for that.
Well, it's been fabulous chatting with you. I
It-
hope I haven't blathered on too
no,
much.
absolutely not. It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon again.
Yes.
Thank you.